Thank you. We do have a few moments left for questions. I wonder if I can invite all of the panelists to come up and take a seat or stand with me behind the lectern if there aren't enough. I think we've nearly got enough, so please come up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise that was there. You showed the modelling between A and B, which was great. But the next question, obviously, is can you design C, and how much better is C?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question, and that's the endeavour. So this is just about 3 months of work that we did, because we are now in the phase to install sensors and get the live data, because we want to work with that. And our endeavour is, in the end, not to just design C, but also to provide solutions in the form of how many windows, what should be the design, so that moving ahead, I'm not just designing from foundation up, but I'm also providing, we are also providing solutions across to the other, which are in different stages of development. And our major goal is to understand local heat adaptation strategies, which can then be included in the design and not just a foreign design that comes in just because it's a high-rise building. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. That was a really good question. Yeah, at the back there. And then there's one just a little in front.
Hey.
Thank you. My question goes to the speaker who just, interesting presentation. I'm also doing a research on how households were able to adapt to health and COVID health and safety protocols in Ghana, and issues about heat in homes were one of the key findings, and some of the strategies they adopted. It's quite fascinating, so I would love to speak to you about and then see what will come out of it. But I wondered what your thoughts were regarding the importance of orientation of the buildings. Do you think they have any major impact in terms of the heat that people experience in their homes? Because I'm saying this on the back of the fact that one of the findings emerging from our work is that people have a lot of windows in their homes, but then the issue is not that they don't have windows, but they still complain of intense heat. So is it the orientation of the building? Does it also play a role in terms of the heat that people experience? That's for you. And for the learned professor who made us learn a new language, how would you, how should we think around a situation where you want to promote an indigenous language as a medium of instruction, but then the people in the class, the students, are from different ethnic groups? So for example, in Africa, you may have people, as a result of migration, you have people belonging to different ethnic groups in the same classroom. And this, as in this orientation of teaching people indigenous language, how would you account for differences in local dialects? Which one would you choose to begin with? And on what basis would you make such a choice? Thank you.
Thank you very much. What we may do is just take another question here before, and then we'll answer them. So there's one, one there and then one with a neighbour.
Okay. My question is for Professor Eugene. I have two questions. One, I'm not so sure if you interviewed teachers from both private schools and public schools, but if that's the case, are there any significant differences between the approaches taken by teachers between private schools and public schools? And secondly, this is just out of curiosity. What happens to the syllabus when the languages keeps on switching between different languages? Do they publish science in French and then go back and publish it in the new language being used? Yeah, thanks.
Do you want to pass the microphone the other way, and then I think we're going to have to, this will be the last question.
My question also goes to Professor Eugene. Quick one. You've talked about the changes in the policy of the government, but the project that you're currently doing is only working with teachers, and there seems to be the changes happening from the government side and not necessarily from the teacher side. They're just on the receiving end. Are you also planning on working with the government to ensure that there's some level of consistency on one side, so that when you're making the changes with the teachers, there's also a level of balance? Thanks.
Thank you. So who's going to go first?
I can go first,
yeah,
and
go
then he can take all the questions. Thank you for the question, because if I may just say that these simulations or what you saw was just for an individual building, as if there was no building around. And that's the case when there is no interference from the context. But our endeavor is to actually later on perform these more complex simulations in context. And regarding the windows, I have done very similar work in other parts of the global south, in India, where they have fantastically very similar policy. And given our experience, providing windows is not the problem. The problem is the socio-cultural context with the windows. So the meaning of windows changes from context to context. It's not just privacy, it's not just dust or pollution, it's also not a thermal control device. It is probably, when we interviewed, we know there were like 7 to 8 other reasons specific to female, specific to children, specific to age group. So what our endeavor is, what we want to do is we want to include these social data into the models and then again generate a more realistic heat health gradient within these houses and see what design works and what design. So orientation definitely will play a part, but we have other parametrics to also look about.
Thank you very much. So Eugene and Ricardo, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble with Caroline for allowing so many questions. So if you could be fairly brief with your answers, I'd appreciate it because it'll protect me.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Question number 1 deals with the issue of promoting indigenous language in terms of teaching. And he went on to say, in a case I were to choose, which one should I choose? Number 1, Rwanda is in a better position because you have one language. So that one, the issue of whether teaching mother tongue or in foreign language is not a problem. Actually, the problem with us, with the medium instruction being English, is not that they don't want English or French, but the way policies keep on fluctuating. And when it fluctuates, they don't give teachers time to learn that language. At least there's what you call, here you've got a program called English for Special Purposes. At least give CPD to teachers to do that. But a policy just comes abruptly. This month, teaching this language. That's the key problem. Okay? It's not a question of hating one language or loving the other, but that abrupt change of policies. So Rwanda has no problem when it comes to that because one language. As for preference for other African countries where there are so many ethnic languages, it's impossible. That's why sometimes you have to accept the reality. With the 40 totally different languages, you cannot say, let us teach this or that. What do? They do it on the regional level. Each region with a particular tribe, they can teach their language at least throughout primary. But you cannot make it national. Otherwise, you'll be creating another civil war. Question 2, the issue of whether we interviewed public and private schools, we did not. Because in Rwanda, private schools tend to have more money. And they tend to employ the so-called expatriates. Usually they get them from Uganda, Kenya, those who are fluent at English language. Because their school fees is high. So they employ expatriates. So they don't have any problem with that. So they teach in English throughout. As opposed to public schools where the salary is very minimal, school fees very low, so they cannot afford expatriates who are fluent at English language. So that's why we wanted to concentrate on public schools. Then we went on to talk the issue of code switching and then how we can influence the publication. That one, again, that's a problem because as these younger people are growing in academic world, in the end, it affects their capacity to articulate their points. You find they're struggling. Somebody may have a PhD, but still struggles. So as you know, this is your area. To come to say that an article has really passed the test of the time, you really have got a strong language. So it's a big disadvantage to our graduates, and that's where actually we have a big problem. Last question was the issue of change of policy and how we may work with the government to influence. Yes, once we are done with this work, we shall have tried a policy brief, talk to the minister, talk to the directors of the Ministry of Education, and show them where the problem is. One of the contributions would be to recommend some kind of CPD to help these teachers. Because as I said, we are not condemning anybody. but we are trying to accept that there is a problem, but how should we solve that problem? So definitely we shall have to meet those people, if at all they think in the way we think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And can you all join with me in thanking the speakers for fantastic